It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Friday, December 22nd, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that is kind of bummed the point streak is over, but there's a lot I think the Flyers can learn from that game.
Yeah, I mean the holiday spectacular was good.
That's good to hear. We're going to do that, plus talk about the upcoming Red Wings game and talk about the state of the Flyers going into the Christmas break, all on today's show.
You're Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on the app formerly known as Twitter at @rmiriam. I'm here as always with Russ Cohen, who's on all your favorite social media apps at Sportsology. We are at Locked On Flyers on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Twitter as well. Today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. Download the Sleeper app and use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. You can find us for free over on YouTube or on the SiriusXM app. Anywhere you listen to podcasts, subscribe. You'll get our latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Russ, again, a little bummed out, but I think that this was a really good learning experience for the Flyers in this game, especially as it relates to like how to execute offensively when you're
hmm
being challenged, right?
Yeah, no question. It's interesting because I know Pete Weber, the voice of the Predators, so I would talk to him in between periods, and they play a similar game, right? We've talked about that before. That's pretty
Mm-hmm.
obvious. The interesting thing is, even though the score was tied after two, if you looked at natural stat trick and other things, you could tell that the Nashville had the ice tilted a little their way. They had a power play to lead off the third period. They didn't score on that. So it's not like the Flyers weren't in the game, but it took them a while, even in the third period, to kind of get the energy up. And that was the part that probably
Yeah.
hurt them. I mean, look, the 5-minute power play, we could go on and do 3 shows about the power play. Maybe Santa will bring them one. I get Couturier scored a power play goal, but the 5-minute power play obviously was really costly.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, this Flyers power play in this game had everything, like a shorthanded goal against an
Yeah.
actual power play goal, and then a 5-minute major where nothing happened, and then they negated the power play. So I feel like the whole power play of this game was emblematic of the Flyers this season,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, to a large degree. But back on the offensive end, I
Yes.
really think that not only did they like not really come back from being challenged by the Nashville defense, but I really think they were just taking desperation shots more than
They were.
actual quality shots. I mean, the metrics, to your point, show that absolutely, but I think that they just, there was a lot of turnaround shots and just, a lot of backhanded shots. I
Yeah, a
thought
lot of
that.
backhanded shots that Saros didn't necessarily force them into. Like, again, what was
Mhm.
interesting is we were talking about Owen Tippett because, again, probably for like the third game in a row, he's trying his backhand on the short side, and he
Mhm.
really didn't have to do that. He had
No.
room where he could have gone on the other side, but it's just like like you said, it clicked in his head that this is the way I'm going to do it, and he decided that's what he was going to do. And I think a few players did that, and I think that
Yeah.
that was kind of odd. There is something to be said about like a Couturier with the patience that he shows, like to score a goal. Not everybody has that patience, and it can be taught. And you do wonder if they, would go over that a little bit because I think if John actually went over that in a video meeting, it would go a long way to kind of show that. You felt bad for Cam Atkinson too because he had a really nice shot on goal
Oh,
there,
man.
and
Oh,
it was I tweeted it. It was one of the best glove saves all year, and honestly, he looked at it in disbelief. Right? He was like, "Are you sure that's not in?" Like, you just felt horrible for him.
oh, man. My heart sank so deep. I just like, what can this guy do? I did think like maybe he made one too many dekes with the stick,
maybe.
that if he had just like opened up a little sooner. Now maybe Saros could have read it better if he had done that. So, there's arguments both ways, but I just felt like it wasn't his best possible shot because he couldn't set himself up properly for it. But again, Saros is so good that I don't know if it would have made a difference, to be
Right.
honest.
It might not have. He did a good job of swooping with his glove right away.
Mhm.
And he's got a
Yeah.
big glove. He does. It's a butterfly net. And so I do feel like that really negated anything Cam was going to do on that. The other thing is, I got to tell you again, Mark Stahl, like that was a bad penalty to take. It
Yeah.
really was. It killed anything that the Flyers had going at that moment. And it was just like, why? Why on this play are you going to do that? Like it just didn't seem like it was necessary.
No, and it was interesting because of how penalty heavy that second period was, and they were
Yeah,
calling a lot of stuff. And then
yeah.
in the third period, it was
They called
like,
nothing.
okay, they called nothing. And
But I
so I
kind of
think,
figured they were going to do that. I was talking to Anthony Mingione next to me, and I do a show with him, and we always chit chat. And I was like, they're not going to call anything this third period because they called so much during this game.
yeah, and I think they just kind of let things go a little bit. Even over the broadcast, it was very clear that the fans were not happy with
No.
the third period in terms of the
Although
lack of calls.
Forster play acted that trip. He didn't. He
Yeah.
did.
No, I don't necessarily think and that should have been called. I'm just saying there was
Yeah.
definite consternation about it. And I do think that it very much played in Nashville's favor in their style of offense to be able to like take additional chances and be more aggressive on the forecheck because nothing was getting called, and we saw the ice tilt a little more even in the third period.
Yeah, it was interesting. When you talk to someone like Pete Weber, you get really good knowledge and just like wisdom, right? And so what he told
Mhm.
me was, I said, this is, a decent game. It's tight. I told him I thought Nashville had a little bit of an edge here, but they weren't really rewarded. He goes, they just have to beat them for one period. And it's
Mhm.
really true. Like that's really what this game boiled down to after a while.
Yeah, and it was funny. I just had, in my head, I was just thinking, "Oh, this just one thing is going to happen, and this is going to determine the outcome of this game. Just one very little thing." And sure enough, like 10 seconds later was when Nashville scored the go-ahead goal, and I was just like, "Not that way. That's not what I meant." But that's really how it felt. That like you look at the Flyers penalty kill again, very strong penalty kill.
Yeah.
I think that for a lot of that game, the Flyers defense was very good at preventing Nashville from getting, you know, really good chances. And Sam Ersson came up big as per usual
Urson
as of
came up
late.
real big. I actually think he covered over some issues in the second period for sure.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, Urson couldn't have played any better. He didn't do anything
Nope.
wrong. I think the overall issue was like we saw some sloppy play, but we also saw play where they would try and get the puck and almost like ping pong it instead of like getting control of it and trying to set something up. Like, we always talk about set play, whatever, try and do. Didn't seem like they wanted it or thought they had any time to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, it was just things were just a little rushed that
Yes.
made it more difficult to execute. And I think that's ultimately why the Flyers weren't able to score any additional goals.
Yeah, no, I think so too. You do have to wonder again when you have an extra attacker out there. Why is Ristolainen out there, and why he's shooting, he misses the net completely. I don't know why he's one of the choices. I don't.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that either. I know he can do that sometimes, but I just think in these high pressure situations, I just don't think he's the guy for that. But
No.
I do think again there's some really good elements to this game, and Travis Konechny worked his butt off in this
Yeah, listen,
game.
Konechny was great. He had a terrific game.
Yeah, yeah, I
Wasn't
thought
his
so
fault.
too. Nope,
No, he
not
was a
at
handful
all.
out there. and he definitely was making things happen for sure. Sanheim, I think, had a good game. I think their top pairing had a good game. They did their best to bottle up Forsberg. He did have one great chance on that power play in the third period, but they did a good job of bottling him up too. Tomasino is a guy that does have skill. I mean, that's the guy that beat him tonight. But you're right. I mean, there's something to learn from it. I think this is now a moment where it's like, okay, you're going to have to sit with this loss for a couple of days. You're not going to be at home for a while. So you really do have to kind of regroup on this, and we'll see. We'll see how the regroup goes.
Well, the Flyers will have a chance to get back on the winning side of the scoreboard today as they face the Detroit Red Wings, who are in a bit of disarray at the moment. So some good
Yep.
opportunities there, and we will talk about that coming up next.
You know that feeling when your favorite Flyers player scores a hat trick? If you want to get that feeling and win 100 times your money, play Daily Fantasy Hockey on the Sleeper app. As the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network, Sleeper is our top choice for daily fantasy sports, especially daily fantasy hockey. Fans can also play daily fantasy, NFL, NBA, MLB, and college football on Sleeper, and entries can be made in under a minute. With elite players like Connor McDavid, Sidney Crosby, and Austin Matthews, plus the new guys like Connor Bedard, all you need to do is make more or less picks on stats for these stars. Choose from stats like goals, assists, saves, plus minus, and more. To win 100 times bet on Sleeper, you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. You heard me, Flyers fans. You can win 100 times your money playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper, so start paying attention and nail your picks so you can start winning big. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL, and you'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms for use for details and locational availability.
Next week on the show, of course, on Monday, we'll have our nemesis of the week, except we won't have it on Monday because that is the Christmas holiday. So we'll squeeze that into Tuesday with the Phantoms coverage. We're going to recap this Red Wings game. We're going to talk about the Western road trip. We've got World Juniors coverage, a lot to talk about next week. The Flyers, of course, play the Detroit Red Wings at 7 p.m. Eastern tonight. You can catch every second of the Flyers' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Search for Flyers. Concluding our week of deja vu, we saw the Red Wings very recently last week, but the Red Wings have gone through some turmoil in that time, astonishingly enough. So Dylan Larkin is back in the lineup after being out after that hit. But the goalie situation has turned into quite the drama with, of course, we saw Alex Lyon taken out of the game against the Flyers, and he has continued to be hurt. Ville Husso got hurt in Monday's 4-3 loss to the Ducks. They had to carry him off the ice. Not great.
No.
So James Reimer played the remainder of that game versus Anaheim, and the Red Wings had to sign another goaltender in Michael Hutchinson.
He's always around, isn't he?
Yeah, I know. He's like an AHL guy that suddenly pops up like a groundhog and appears. But so that's really like the tandem that's getting them through until Christmas, which like that's wild. Just
Yeah,
to
it's a
think
little
about.
scary because, they were, I guess, to some looking like a playoff team. I didn't think they really were, but I thought, they got Patrick Kane. We'll see what he can do, and, we'll go from there. Right now, things ain't great.
No, and Dylan Larkin even said, like, this team is spiraling, and it is not good. They've lost 4 in a row now, including that previous game against the Flyers, and they've dropped a place in the standings to 5th in the Atlantic in that stretch. It's just been like they just can't put games together the way they were able to do earlier in the season.
Yeah, I mean, again, they're 1-6-1 with Patrick Kane. I'm not going to blame it all on him, but again, he does change things when he gets there. Then Larkin was out, so then people were like, well, it's because of Larkin. And I'm like, okay, so now Larkin's back, and they're still losing now. Goaltending, okay, but you still have to overcome these things if you want to make the playoffs. Doesn't matter what team you are, things are always going to happen. And as we're seeing, at least in the interim, they're not deep enough.
No, they just aren't, and Perron should be back in this game, and
That'll help them.
maybe that will help, but I feel like things are so discombobulated that changes like that could be a really good thing for them and spark them to play better, or it could go the exact opposite direction because things are a mess already, and adding something new to the mix just adds to the uncertainty.
Yeah,
And that's
there's
kind of
always a
where the
chance.
Red Wings are.
Yeah, that is kind of where they are. There's always a chance of that. And yeah, I mean, look, they're still a dangerous opponent. They have some good players. That top line's really good. Raymond's really good. Now you got Larkin back. Mo Sider is always a risk to do things. Perron, if he gets in there, is definitely a risk to score. But yeah, it seems like, will their defense hold up against the Flyers' forecheck? May not. And the goaltending, we don't know if that's going to hold up. So this one could be a blowout Flyers way, or it could end up being something close. So
Yeah, I think
that's kind of the way I see it.
one of the big factors here is that the Flyers, of course, will be playing on the second half of a back-to-back here, traveling from a home game to a road game, and the Red Wings will have had a day or two to sit and think about what they've done. So I think that getting the rest and maybe a chance to reset could help the Red Wings, but also we are recording this portion of the show prior to the Nashville game. But even like not knowing the results of that game right now, the Flyers are still, I think, in pretty good momentum mode here, and so I don't think even a loss would prevent them from just looking ahead to the next game.
No, I think for this one, you probably see Urson in there because Hart's going to want to play against Edmonton if he feels good, and so I think that's probably what they're targeting.
Do you think they'll put him in back to back?
No, no, they won't put him in back to back. So I think Hart would play against Edmonton, not Detroit.
Right, so if plays against Nashville,
Oh, he
who
would be
plays
back to
against?
back. I think they would use Urson back to back. Sorry.
Okay.
Yes, I think John Tortorella would do that because I think um, he's done it before, like he did it last year, I believe.
Yeah, I think given the fact that there's a break after it,
Yeah,
I think he'd be willing to do it, but I think it's a decision he's gonna make after the Nashville game to see how busy he was and how
right.
hard he worked, and talk to him and be like, "How do you feel? Could you go again?"
Yeah,
So,
or just put him in
but
and not talk to him at all because again, as we saw, John he didn't talk to Joel Farabee at all. So how do we know he's actually going to talk to Sam Urson?
well, somebody will talk to Sam Emerson, who will then
Somebody
talk
will.
to John
Yeah.
Tortorella.
Yes.
That is what I surmise will take place. But yeah, I just think that this Detroit game, like you want to go into the break strong, right?
You do.
And
That's a
so
big
to
thing. It's like
carry,
a mental thing. You feel good about it. It's bad enough that they're going to be on the road for the holidays. So yeah, you want it to be strong.
no man, that's just like you have a stretch of a few home games and then you got to play this one road game before the Christmas break. Like that's really annoying, I gotta say.
The life of a hockey player. What are you going to do? And then New Year's, same thing. New Year's, they're going to be, elsewhere.
Well,
So
New Year's, they're always on the road. That's, like, something
yeah,
as a Flyers player for the last, like, 3 decades. It's always been Disney on Ice
yeah.
for that stretch of time at the arena. But, yeah, I am really excited to see what the future brings, and, we are going to just, take stock as we get into this Christmas break and see where we are relative to last year at this time, and kinda, look ahead to the new year. We will do that coming up next. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. They've got over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with their eBay guaranteed fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your car every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. They've got all the parts you need at the prices you want. It's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit only available to U.S. customers. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league, including Locked On NHL. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe. Russ, I went into the ye old Wayback Machine on the internet and looking at the Flyers last year at this time at Christmas. They were 11, 17, and 7. They were in 7th place in the Metro and had a brutal negative 29 goal differential. Like, what a difference a year makes.
I mean, we did know if Sean Couturier was going to be back and Cam Atkinson was going to be back, that the team would be better. Couturier plays top center. He takes those minutes. That's a big deal. He wins faceoffs. He helps the penalty kill. Now the penalty kill is better, which is something that John was hoping for. So those things instantly wipes out a bunch of losses from last year. They're better as far as the structure, but I think the issue is they're better because they also added more veterans. They're not necessarily better because of their youth. Their youth is not really pulling them through on this yet, and I would like to see more of that. But there's some youth playing, and then there's some that's playing in and out like Zamula. So I'm not seeing enough of that. But the team was definitely going to be better based on the veterans that were back, and also we have to be honest, they added a lot of veterans.
They did, but they also added, I think, Ryan Poehling, who is, I wouldn't call him like an older guy, right? He's a
No, but
younger.
he's a one-year guy. So, like, what's the odds he's
Yeah.
coming back? I look at him that way.
Yeah, and I think, the surprise of Sean Walker, I would
Mhm.
say, is something unexpected that has led to not only the defense being better than we might have expected after losing Ivan Provorov from last season. I think he has made Nick Seeler a better player in the long
That's fair.
run. And that pairing, I think, has done a lot more for this team than we might have expected, and that has made a huge difference. I think that Steeler didn't necessarily have, like, the right defenseman to play with last season, just the way things were getting shuffled around last year too much with not sure where they were gonna put Sanheim and not sure where Risto fit in. Now I just feel like there's, like, more of a solid foundation to this blue line, and, there is that issue with Zamula maybe not getting enough playing time to truly evaluate him, and I think that's valid, but I do think that structure is there because there's more consistency
Yeah,
overall, and I think that's helped.
that's definitely helped. I mean, I'm not going to say it's not, but yeah. So I think all those factors have made things better. It's just that what's going to be the plan? What's the plan going forward? That's really what's important.
Yeah, and yesterday, prior to the Nashville game, John Tortorella was asked, how do you judge this as a playoff team? Like, are you excited to get this team into a playoff race? And he said specifically that you don't know what a team is until the end of January, and he doesn't really want to entertain that conversation. And, normally I think I would say, like, oh, that's just John being John. He doesn't want to talk about anything, but I think this is actually a good thing for him to have said
Yeah,
that
I
because
agree. I think that's valid for this team. Injuries can occur based on the players they have. I mean, just even with the sickness of Carter Hart, what if that keeps carrying on? Are you going to expect this kind of play from Urson for the next 5 games? You don't know if you're getting that. So I think, it's fair to him for him to say that.
Yeah, and I think also you wanna keep things going the way they have been from a
Mhm.
consistency, and they've generally been playing well, and they've been winning a lot of games. So you don't wanna add this extra layer of stress and pressure to
Mhm.
them to say like, "Oh, you guys have to make the playoffs or the season is a failure." Like, that's ludicrous and not a good use of time for this team to,
Yeah,
like,
I don't think it needs to be in there. So I'm in full agreement.
yeah, so I think it's a good thing to kinda put off
Mhm.
that conversation for now, and, it gives them a little more time to fine tune some of the things we've been talking about, like getting the power play going. Let's get Cam Atkinson going. Let's get the minutes balanced better, and again, in that same presser, Torts is exceedingly aware of getting Coots's minutes under control, but he's, like, feeling forced to put him in there more than he wants to because of situational games where they're close, and he's like, "We need to put games away earlier so I can rest Sean Couturier on the bench," and
Right.
I think that's also fair.
No, it is. I also think John recognizes that right now with the Eagles slumping, more people are paying attention to the Flyers. More people are now saying, "Oh, look, the Flyers look like a playoff team," and we're going to start getting on this carousel where the Flyers are, going to go in the playoffs and blah blah blah. And he doesn't want to get into any of that right now, and that's
Yeah.
fair because again, a month ago, people weren't even thinking about it. They were all in on the Eagles. The Eagles didn't lose. I don't even know if they had lost a game yet at that point, right? So the landscape in Philly has changed too.
Yeah, and, like, we know that fans in Philly get, it's just a cyclical thing with
They
how
get
we
carried
are.
away sometimes. They do.
Yeah, but, we also have fun while we do it, so,
Absolutely. Yeah, there's no doubt about that.
but, yeah, there is that infamous cocky versus distraught
Hmm.
scale for Philadelphia sports fans, and that's absolutely true. Um, Going back to, balancing the minutes, Torts also mentioned specifically, when Noah Cates comes back, that'll help mitigate things. And, in theory, that could potentially be like early February. So I think that'll be good timing to get somebody who's a penalty killer and a guy that can take some of those minutes
Is he going to
back.
take Bobby Brink out of the lineup or Forster? He might, and then I'm not going to
Well,
be
I
happy.
don't know. Well, but he could, take other people out of the lineup
Sure, he could
because
take Nick Delorier out at any moment, and nobody would care. But is he going to do that? I don't think so.
I think it'll depend on the circumstances of the team at that point. I think it really will. And like, what are we looking at standings wise? What are we looking at, in terms of leading up to the trade deadline? How do we want to manage this team? I think there's going to be a lot of factors that will, affect what that will look like for them. But, yeah, I think that, the Flyers are in a really good position right now. They've
They
been
are.
a lot of fun, and I, for one, am exceedingly pleased that we are talking about a lot of wins. We're talking about positive change, and, I'm definitely looking forward to the new year. Before that, the Flyers will be heading on their annual, West road trip that they do and, hitting Alberta and Vancouver and all of that. So and, the Kraken as well out there. And, so we'll be talking about all of that next week. And,
Which
we
means they'll be
will
on
like
road to the Winter Classic too, because they're
yep.
filming that all leading up to the Winter Classic in Seattle, so they'll be on that.
Yep. So that'll be another reason for us to tune in to all of those broadcasts. And yeah, so there's a lot of good stuff coming up. We'll talk about that. We are taking the Christmas holiday off. So we will be back on Tuesday with our next episode. As a reminder, we always want to hear from you. So if you've got mailbag questions you want us to answer, you can send them to us via Twitter at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail or comment over on YouTube. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Have a great holiday weekend, everyone.